My name is Mobina Jaffer. I was born in Uganda, and I have one brother and four sisters. My parents' name, my father's name is Sherali Bandali Jaffer, and my mother's name is Gulbanu Bandali Jaffer. My father was a member of parliament in Uganda, and my mother was the first woman to go to university in East Africa. And she was a mathematics teacher, and then later on in life she became a social worker. And my mother used to go to all kinds of schools or universities around the world. For example, she went to Kent University. She went to university in the UK, and my father brought us up. We were 6 children, my 5 sisters and 1 brother, and my father was the one who raised us a lot of the time because my mother used to go to study. My mother was a social worker, and at that time when she was a social worker, she did adoptions, she supervised lashings, which was something that happened in Uganda, and she did a lot of work in the court system. My mother was a very brave woman, so we had very good role models. And even though we were 5 sisters, my father never felt that he didn't have enough sons, and he educated us all to his best ability. And for me, I was the eldest, and he sent me to England to continue with my studies, and I got a law degree from London University. And when I was finishing my law degree, unfortunately, we became refugees. In 1972, we became refugees. In 1971, I married my husband Nurala. Had a very big wedding in Uganda, and then I returned to England to finish my studies. And in 1972, just as I was finishing my studies, I had returned to Uganda in June, and in August, we were told by Idi Amin that we were to leave immediately. At first, we didn't take this very seriously, but it became very obvious that he meant to have us leave. So when we became refugees, that was very difficult. My mother was in England because one of my sisters was having a surgery. So my father had to leave suddenly one day, and we had a few days when we did not know where he was. So that was very, very difficult. Then my husband and I returned to Uganda. And when we returned to Uganda, that was before Idi Amin asked us to leave. We returned in June, and we were planning to stay in Uganda. And unfortunately, our world all came to collapse when Idi Amin asked us to leave. We were Ugandans. My father and mother were both born in Africa. My mother in Kenya, my father in Uganda. And I was born in Uganda, and so were my siblings. Uganda was our home. And it's still in many ways our home. That's where we grew up. And when we had to leave Uganda, it was very tough. In September, when my whole family had returned to England, my father decided that he would not settle his family until all the refugees were settled. And it took him 2 years to work to help refugees get settled. He went to India, he went across Europe to help Ugandan nations settle, because he felt that that was his job. He went to India a number of times to help people who were stuck in India to find asylum in European or American countries. And then in 1974, my father came to Canada, and my husband and I came to Canada in 1975. In 1975, when I came to Canada, I had a law degree from London University. I had done my solicitor's exams in London, and when I came to Canada, the biggest shock I had was my qualifications were not accepted. And so I had a real setback when it came to leaving Uganda. But when I came to Canada and found out that my qualifications would not be accepted here, it was not even just about qualifications. When I went to the Law Society, they won't even give me the forms to assess my application, and I was just devastated. That's when I really felt I'd lost everything. But I'm a very lucky person. I started working as a Girl Friday, doing some jobs as a messenger for a very prestigious lawyer, prominent lawyer, Mr. Dome. And before I knew it, he walked up to the Law Society, brought the forms, I filled in the forms. Within 10 days, the Law Society processed my application because now it was being done under the supervision of Mr. Dome, who had just finished being a Supreme Court justice and was very well known. And they were not going to give him a difficult time. But they kept asking me, how come this man is helping you? I was just lucky that I had found somebody who cared about my career. And so then they processed my application. They asked me to do an exam, which I did. And I became a lawyer. I did all the exams by 1776. But unfortunately, at that time, to be a lawyer, you had to be a Canadian citizen. So I articled for Mr. Dome for 2 years. And so in 1978, I became a lawyer. And it was one of the happiest days in my life. I love being a lawyer. I absolutely love being a lawyer. And in 1973, my son was born. And then, so I already had a son. And then in 1978, I just had my son. And so once I became a lawyer, even before I became a lawyer, for the 2 years that I was articling, I was very involved in women's movements and in the community. And when I just was very passionate about practicing law. And what I found, because this had not been my life's experience, is that the violence against women. And so with other women, we formed an immigrant and visible minority organization. I was the founding president. And the 3 things we worked on was issues of racism, issues of violence against women, and the providing of English language to women. And those, it didn't matter what other issues came up, we concentrated on those 3. And for me, violence against women is something I still work on. And I was just shocked as to how much, especially within our South Asian community, there was issues of violence against women. I'm not saying for a minute that we have more. It was just because it was different, and there were issues of extended family, honor killing, early marriages, all different kind of issues. And so I would go to court and I would succeed in the application, and yet my client still got hurt. My client still did not get her rights. And that's why I got very involved in women's issues. And I am still involved in women's issues. And when I first came to this country, I never thought that I could go into politics, because I thought as a refugee you lost all your rights. And what is wonderful about Canada is that that's not true. And I became very involved with Mr. Chrétien and in the Liberal Party, and even before with Mr. Trudeau, with the Liberal Party of Canada, Mr. Trudeau Sr. And in 1993, I ran as a Liberal candidate in North Vancouver, and then in 97 I ran as a Liberal candidate in Burnaby. In the meantime, I've jumped a lot of hoops. I did adopt a second child, Farzana, in 1980, my gift from God. So I'm very blessed. I have 2 children, and now I also have 2 grandchildren from my son. My grandson, Ayan, is 9 years old, and Almira is 2 years old. So as a mother, as a grandparent, as a wife, I've always been very lucky. I've been fortunate that I have a very supportive husband, and my children now are also very supportive of me, and so is my daughter-in-law, Shalina. And when my children were growing, especially my son, when I came here, my mother is probably the only person that I know got her accreditation without going to school as a social worker. And the day she received her accreditation was within a few months of us arriving here. She had no issues. She went to the university. She went to the where she had to go to the social work board. They all gave her accreditation without any exams, because she was so knowledgeable, and she had studied so much, and she had all her certificates. That the day she received it, she said to me, "I have worked all my life. I will raise your children. I will raise your son, and you go and work hard." And so literally, my parents have raised my son, and I often think that my son, and I know that my son thinks of them as parents, and I'm just a second mom. So in 2000, my son became a lawyer, And my son and now, we have a law practice, and we practice family law, personal injury, and estates. And I continue practicing law because that sort of grounds me, and it really, I have a passion for practicing law, so I continue to do that. But I ran, as I told you, in 1993 and in 1997. Unfortunately, I did not win either time. And in 2001, Mr. Chrétien asked me to whether I was interested in becoming a senator, and of course I was very pleasantly surprised. That's not something I ever expected, and I jumped at the opportunity. And he teased me. He said, "You will be the first African senator, you will be the first South Asian senator, you will be the first Muslim senator, and to top it all, you're a woman, so I get 4 in 1." Mr. Chrétien has a very wicked sense of humor, and he always said to me, that's why he appointed me, because of all the firsts he could cover. But when I went to the Senate, it was, I was appointed in June, but my swearing-in ceremony was in September, and it was 1 week after 9/11. So you can imagine the first Muslim senator being sworn into the Senate of Canada 1 week after 9/11. So after 9/11, it was 1 week after I had been sworn in, as I got sworn in 1 week after 9/11. So that, and imagine being the first Muslim senator to be sworn in one week after 9/11. So those caused some interesting challenges for my family. But I immediately got thrown into the terrorism debate, which was a new debate in Canada, and I have been involved in the issues of terrorism since that time, and I'm very much involved now in the issues of terrorism. And in fact, next week I'm going to New York. I've been invited by the European Union and the UN to speak on how we counter terrorism. How do we counter terrorism? And my belief is that to counter terrorism, you have to involve the women. For example, I have worked with women in Peshawar, where they involve the mothers, and if a mother sees too much money or too many guns, then she will call the group that I work with, and they will intervene to stop the child from becoming a terrorist. And I work all over the world. I just came back from Lebanon, and I really believe that for us to stop what's happening, how the world is just going in a really wrong direction, is that the women have to be involved. Why women have to be involved is because women are the eyes and ears in the community. Women know what is happening on the ground. Women know what is happening in different parts of the community. And if you stop, and if you don't have that voice, then we cannot have sustaining peace. So let me give you an example. In 2002, Mr. Chrétien appointed me to be the envoy for women, peace and security for Canada, and also the envoy to Sudan. And as the envoy to Sudan, as the first person ever to bring 17 women to the peace process, the Sudanese peace process, the Darfurian process. I brought 17 women from the refugee camps with a UN plane to Abuja. And why was that important? It's important because you have to have women involved in peace processes. So when the peace negotiations were going on, there would be issues come up, and the men would say they were looking at river water rights or food routes, and the women would look and say, we live in that community. That river has dried up 5 years ago. Stop talking about it. There is no river there. Or for the food routes, they said, that's never going to be a route we can take because it's mined. You cannot go through there. And why I say this is that the women have the pulse of what's happening in the community. That is why I believe that women have to be at the table. And I just came back last week from Brussels, where the European Union and Norway had brought us women together to see how do we be the other voice, how do we counter extremism. And I believe that to counter extremism, we have to involve the women. So that's one issue I work on. But in Canada, there are many issues I work on. as your senator, I am on the I work on the terrorism issues. I work on official languages, as I truly believe that French and English should be spoken by all Canadians. I am the chair of the Human Rights Committee, where we're always looking at issues that affect Canadians. And then one issue that I've been involved in for almost 10 years or even longer is to make our public service more representative. In the moment the public service has, what it is there's a law in Canada that the public service should reflect the population. And at the moment our public service does not reflect our population, which does not reflect the number of Aboriginal people, the number of women, the number of people of color and people with disabilities in the public service, and especially people of color, especially visible minority. There is not one deputy minister in our federal service in Canada. That's not acceptable. And I'm fighting really hard that we need to have deputy ministers from all walks of life. It should represent our whole community, not just certain communities. And the other issue that I am working on at the moment, and I need support from people who are listening, is on heritage languages. I had introduced this bill before, but unfortunately it did not proceed very far. I'm going to reintroduce this bill. So let me explain what I mean by this. I am a great proponent that all Canadians should speak French and English, because those are our official languages. But I also believe that the heritage languages, for example, Punjabi, Mandarin, Cantonese, Korean, Gujarati, Swahili, European languages, German, those languages should also be taught in school. And our children should also become fluent in a language. Like I believe that every child should also know Spanish, because we live in the Americas. And if we are going to have our children become part of the new world, we can't just go with English. As we know that when you speak a person's language, you understand their culture, you understand who they are. And I truly believe, my children speak English, French, Spanish, and obviously Kutchi, and I feel they shouldn't even know more languages, because that is the way that they go to the heart of the person. For anything in this world, you have to build relationships. And to build relationships, you have to have the language of that person. Now, for those who are listening, especially younger people, I want to tell you that I have been painting a rosy picture of all the things I have been able to do in our great country. But it's not been easy. I am a mother of 2 children, and there were always issues about balance, and I have never been able to balance well. But I always knew that I was not a superwoman, and I couldn't do it all. And so everything I owe in my advancement, I owe it to my parents and my siblings and my husband, who played an equal role in raising my family and also helping me with housework. As for being the first woman, East Indian woman, South Asian woman practicing law in Canada, there were many challenges. I would be taken as the accused, the interpreter, but hardly ever as a lawyer. Happily, I had somebody else helping me, and that was Mr. Dome, who was always there to support me. And in my political world, I've had Mr. Chrétien and others who have been very supportive of the work I do. So I say to you, we will all have challenges, but don't think that you are alone. Reach out to people who care about you, who love you, to make sure they are there in your journey. In the Senate, one of the committees that I am in is the Legal Committee, where we look at legislation, especially to do with criminal activities. And I'm reaching out to those who are taking the easy route, thinking that they can become very wealthy by taking a fast route, a criminal route. Sooner or later, that breaks down. Sooner or later, there is a price to pay. You pay now or you pay later. And I suggest to you, work hard now, and you will get the fruits later. The shortcut never works. And I want to say to you that, to those who are struggling, those who haven't come, who are new, I live by a few rules. And the one rule I told you is that I always believe you cannot do anything alone. And I have this system, and I even have used it with Mr. Chrétien, who didn't even know me, and that's how we became very good friends, is I have the 10-minute rule. Anytime you're struggling, doesn't matter who it is, you can pick the phone up and say, can I have 10 minutes with you? Not half an hour, not lunch, not coffee. Majority of the people will give you 10 minutes. And then go with the set of questions you have and ask them the questions, and at 9 minutes you get up. And the person will say, no, stay, I can answer questions. Say, next time. And if you respect the 10-minute rule, in 10 minutes you can learn a lot. You can ask a person, how do I do this? What do I do? And people will help. I have found Canadians, I've never had anybody say no to me for the 10 minutes. The second thing is, I never try and be 100% better. Nobody can. I just try every day to be 1% better. Try it. If you try to be just 1% better than yesterday, you will achieve so much more. And the last thing I say to you is, whatever spiritual guide you have, whatever gives you peace, I believe there is a time for gratitude too. I have a lot to be grateful about, and I never forget the people who have brought me here, the Creator that has given me so many opportunities. Yes, there have been many, many challenges. I could probably write a book of all the challenges, but I don't remember those. I just remember the beautiful children and grandchildren I have, and I have the best job in the world. I have a job where I travel, where I'm trying to make a difference for one person at a time. Every morning I get up and say, I just want to make a difference for that one person. Not for hundreds, not for thousands. If I make a difference for that one person has a family, that family has many relatives. So in that way, you make a difference to a lot of people.